My name is Marjorie Scher, and I am the president of the Lake County Bar Association. This event is sponsored by the League of Women Voters, the Daily Herald, the American Association of University Women, and the Lake County Bar Association. We are lucky to live in a society where we have the right to free speech, a right that is often taken for granted. There are many in this world who are fighting for that right to say what they desire without fear of ramifications. Debates, like this one tonight, allow those in a political race to inform the public of their thoughts and ideas and set forth their plan as to how they can best serve the public. We are privileged that these candidates have taken their time out of their busy schedules to enable the voters of Lake County to become informed about the office for which they are running and how each individual's qualifications will allow them to serve the citizens of Lake County. I would now like to introduce Pete Nenny, the Lake County editor of the Daily Herald.
Thanks, Marjorie. I want to welcome everyone to tonight's forum, which is going to focus on the Lake County officials. Tonight you're going to hear from the candidates for the Lake County Recorder of Deeds, Clerk of the Circuit Court, and State's Attorney as they discuss their candidacy for these countywide offices and answer questions about important issues. You're going to hear an opening statement from Steve Newton, who is the Republican candidate for Lake County Coroner. His opponent, Thomas Rudd, couldn't be here because of a scheduling conflict. Again, we want to thank you for taking your time and effort to become an educated voter. Attending forums, meeting candidates, and learning about their positions on issues are critical steps in the process of making your vote count. While much of the focus these days is on the presidential race, it's no secret that we face a host of important issues in Illinois and here in Lake County that also deserve our attention. So without further delay, I'd like to turn over the program to our moderator, Judy Hoffman. Judy is the League of Women Voters trained moderator and a member of the League of Women Voters of Evanston. Per league guidelines, she resides outside of the voting districts of the offices represented at our forum today. Please welcome Judy Hoffman, who will now explain the ground rules for tonight's forum. Judy?
Good evening. The League of... Is my mic on? The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan political organization in existence since 1920, which encourages active participation in government. The League works to increase understanding of public policy issues and influence public policy through education and grassroots advocacy. The League neither supports nor opposes candidates for office at any level. In the spirit of nonpartisanship, no campaign pins, shirts, hats, or signs can be displayed in this room. So please, if you're wearing any buttons at this time, please take them off. Candidate materials can be found on the table outside of this room. Please silence your cell phones and pagers. And we will go through some of the rules here and then get started with Mr. Newton. As you know, there was 2 candidates on the election ballot for the office of Coroner of Lake County, and we will hear up to 2 minutes from Mr. Newton. Audience questions are now being accepted for the other forums we will have this evening. And you can ask for, raise your hand if you need cards and pencils. And if you want a card anytime during the forum, I will bring them to you, and then raise your hand to have them picked up. If you're going to be putting forth a question now, please note on the card which question the forum is for, which race. Members of the sponsoring organizations will review your questions for redundancy and sort them to allow the widest variety of issues to be addressed, and they'll bring them to me. Before we started for the races with 2 candidates, we did a coin toss. We will do the state's attorneys. We'll take a break after the recorder of deeds and clerk of the circuit court to do the state's attorney race. Those candidates are not here yet. And candidate A will make the first opening and first closing statement. Candidate B will make the first response to the first question and make the final closing statement. And the candidates will rotate on first response to the other questions. Timekeepers and cards will give the candidates notice of the remaining time on each statement and question. If a candidate is still speaking when the stop sign is raised, stop card, he or she may complete a sentence as long as it requires only a few words. I will go through the timing for each race forum when we get to it, but we will start at this time with Mr. Steve Newton for the office of coroner.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Thank you for coming out tonight to hear the candidates speak. I think it's important that we do make some informed decisions in the upcoming election. I'd also like to thank the sponsoring organizations for hosting this event tonight, and for CLC for providing the venue. 20 months ago, I started my campaign for Lake County Coroner. And 20 months ago, I set out to return some core values to the coroner's office. Those of integrity, respect, and compassion. With 20 days left in this campaign cycle, we're sticking to those core values. We haven't wavered over the past 20 months, nor will we now. We've run a positive, above-board campaign discussing the issues with the coroner's office, the issues that I feel we can take care of. Some of the things that I'd like to speak of really quickly, given that I only have 2 minutes, and I apologize that you don't get to hear a little bit more about the differences between myself and my opponent. But some of the things that I would like to address would be the way the coroner's office has been run over the past few years. A lot of you probably know that I used to work in the coroner's office. I was there for 7 years, 3 as an investigator and 4 as a chief deputy coroner. I've completed, assisted with, or supervised over 10,000 death investigations in this county, and I feel that experience is definitely a must to run this office. We're dealing with people at the worst possible time in their lives. And when it comes to taking care of the families, that's what the coroner's race should be about. The coroner's office is much more than a laboratory. The coroner's office is somebody that's going to be there for you and guide you and help you through that time in your life. Again, I apologize, I only have a couple minutes to talk to you. Please feel free to visit my website and get more information. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you, Mr. Newton. Thank you. Let's see. Is this on now? No? Can you hear me okay without the microphone? Okay. I'd like to ask that the 2 candidates come forward that are running for Recorder of Deeds of Lake County. The 2 candidates on the election ballot for the office of the Clerk of the Circuit Court of Lake County. Let me try that again.
Wrong one.
For the office, there are 2 candidates on the election ballot for the officer of Recorder of Deeds of Lake County. I apologize. We have incumbent Mary Ellen Vanderventer is the Democratic candidate, and Bob Bednar is the Republican candidate. The forum we will have now for Recorder of Deeds will run 20 minutes. Their opening statements will run 2 minutes, followed by the questions between them will run 1 minute, and the closing statements will run 1.5 minutes. I will be happy to repeat any questions for the candidates as we go forward. And this is a nonpartisan event focusing on the issues, we ask the audience to refrain from any loud comments or applause during the forum. We had the coin toss, and the candidate A will be, for the opening, will be Mr. Bednar. We will now begin with the first opening statement. Mr. Bednar, you have 2 minutes.
Thank you. My name is Bob Bednar. I'm the Republican candidate for Recorder of Deeds. Thank you so much to the Daily Herald, the Lake County Bar Association, the League of Women Voters of Lake County, and the American Association of University Women for providing this forum. I think it's great when voters get a chance to become educated on the issues, field direct questions to candidates, and find out more information about what's on the ballot. When you vote, your ballot is very long. You've got races on the front, you've got races on the back. There's a tendency in a presidential election for folks to sometimes go in, maybe just fill out the front, and they don't realize that the Recorder of Deeds race is on the back ballot. Why am I running for this office? I believe that government has to be more efficient. I think we're seeing it in some places. And in Lake County, I think we can see it in the Recorder of Deeds office. Several counties in Illinois have consolidated their Recorder of Deeds office and made it a department in their county clerk's office. The only way that this can happen is if the county board puts a referendum on the ballot and allows voters to decide that issue, yes or no. This is happening in 3 counties in Illinois. It's happened in Tazewell County, which is the Peoria area. It happened in Kendall County in the primary ballot, March 20th, and it's happening on November 6th in McLean County, which is the Bloomington-Normal area. That's pretty much been the cornerstone of my campaign. I want to see more efficient government. My background is pretty straightforward. I graduated from Lewis University with an accounting degree. I worked as a bank controller for about 10 years. I worked in the mortgage industry for over 20. I'm a licensed insurance agent in 4 areas. And during those years of being a bank controller and doing in the mortgage business, I learned a lot about deeds, about mortgages, about liens, about releases, all of the things that happen in the recorder's office. So I think I'm well qualified to do this consolidation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bednar. Ms. Vanderventer, you have 2 minutes.
Thank you. I'm delighted to be here tonight, and I want to thank all of you for coming out and thanking all of our sponsors. Thanks so much for this event. It's really wonderful. I have served as your Lake County Recorder for 16 years, and I am incredibly proud of all that my staff and I have done. I'm running today on my record of accomplishments, my passion for the job, and my passion for the people that we serve. As the keeper of history in Lake County, we continue to utilize available technology, transforming the office into a modern, responsive, and friendly operation, while still keeping the old-fashioned traditions of the office alive. Each and every phone call is still answered by a real live human being. There's no buttons or menus to push. Over the last 5 years, we have reduced our budget by 25% while increasing accessibility and offering the best business practices for our customers. I would ask that you remember 2 things tonight. Number 1, no taxes are collected or used in the operation of the recorder's office. No taxes. It is strictly user fees. And number two, there is not a single duty or task that is performed in the recorder's office that is duplicated by any other unit of government. Nobody does the work that we do in the recorder's office. So I thank you very much, and I'm excited to get to your questions. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Ms. Vanderventer. And we'll now begin the questions, beginning with Ms. Vanderventer. Oh, take a moment. There we are.
Oh, now you can hear.
Difference. And you'll have 1 minute to answer the question.
Gotta talk fast.
Do you think the recorder should be an elected or an appointed office?
Oh, well, I guess I think it should be, should continue to be elected for a whole host of reasons, but mostly for events like this. You certainly have an opportunity to decide who is going to be the department head. You are here to either, in my case, to continue to hire me for the next 4 years. I think it gives the voters a wonderful opportunity when they have a say in these elections. I would also add that, you know, when I was running back in 1996, I did try to figure out why the recorder is an elected position. And I really think that from all that we could find out, it's really because very often we deal with very sensitive information. While it's public information, it still is private and it's still really important to people. So I think that the voters need a say in who is at the helm of this office. I think it should continue to be elected.
Thank you, Ms. Vanderventer. Mr. Bednar.
Would you repeat the question, please?
Yes. Do you think the recorder should be an elected or an appointed office?
Neither. I think this is a thin little layer of administration that every county in Illinois needs to deal with. As I've walked door to door and gone to meet and greets and gone into people's homes, I've had so many of them ask, do we really elect somebody to this? They don't remember voting for this 4 years ago or 8 years ago or even 20 years ago. And we have so many candidates that are on the ballot, you can't get a chance to understand anything about some of those races. When you look at the ballot and you look at gross totals at the end of the day, there's a tremendous undervote on some of these offices. Sometimes 5,000 to 10,000 people don't bother to vote those offices. I've run on a campaign of consolidation because it's the only way that you can eliminate this layer of government. It's the only way it's going to happen. I think Mary Ellen's done a nice job for 16 years, but the statute that created this was decades before computers were invented. It's an outdated statute.
Thank you, Mr. Bednar. And now you'll answer the next question first. How will you improve efficiency in the office?
Efficiency is the key, especially when you talk about administrative responsibilities. The Recorder of Deeds office has a retail counter. It has people sitting at desks using computers, inputting information, scanning technology, which takes care of recording those documents. There's some legwork that happens here and there. But guess what? Very similar functions are going on in county clerk's offices. Other counties have discovered that. The 3 counties I mentioned in my opening statement all have populations well over 100,000. And they didn't do this foolhardily. They realized that they needed to make government work better where they are. This is a cash cow office. It takes in $3.5 million more than it spends in payroll. But we're spending $1.3 million when maybe we could reduce that to $500,000 or $600,000. And the recorder's salary, there's another 6 figures that I think we can save. So efficiency, I'm your candidate.
Thank you, Mr. Bednar. Ms. Vanderventer.
Could you repeat it one more time?
Absolutely. How will you improve efficiency in the office?
Okay. I'm really proud of all that we have done in the recorder's office over the last 16 years. When I first got there in 1996, we didn't even have a fax machine, and deeds didn't even have to be notarized. We have come so far over the last 16 years. I'm really proud of all my accomplishments. In 2005, we were the first state to immediately notify homeowners of a change in title using a quitclaim deed. That has been instrumental throughout the state. In 2009, we redacted millions of Social Security numbers off the public rolls. Even though it's public information, we still wanted to redact all those Social Security numbers for mortgage fraud and identity theft. I don't think my opponent has even stepped foot into our office, let alone know what we do. We are there to protect the taxpayer's biggest investment, their home, all the paperwork to their home. But not only that, we handle all the military documents. I have a lot more to say. Darn it.
Thank you.
Gotta talk fast.
Thank you, Ms. Vanderventer. Now we'll start with you
Okay.
for the next question. What are your 3 goals you have for the office?
Well, my 3 goals. My goal is to continue what I think is exceptional customer service. We are very proud of the work that we do with, we have 2 different types of clients in our office. One is the professional user, the bankers, the lawyers, the assessors, the different government offices. We work very closely with them to provide the best customer service possible. We work with them to see what ideas and plans and visions they have for their businesses and how we can help them. We have an e-newsletter that goes out every month to all of our clients. We ask for feedback on how we can continue to improve the operation. And then we have regular folks like you and me who come in every single day. We work very hard with them to protect their biggest investment. All of our documents are now on the internet for different subscribers to use. That was a huge project for us. I just want to continue the goal of serving all the taxpayers in Lake County.
Thank you, Ms. Vanderventer. Mr. Bednar, what are your 3 goals for the office?
3 goals. Number 1 goal is efficiency. The voters come first, the taxpayers come first, the citizens come first. Just because this is an office that's a cash cow, it doesn't mean that we should just leave it alone and not look within. We've had the same person at the home for 16 years. Sometimes a different set of eyes sees a lot of other things that weren't noticed. One of the things that happens, I think, to a lot of folks that get into elected office is that once you get in there and you're in there for a long time, you enjoy it. It's good salary, it's inside work, there's no heavy lifting. There's a lot of reasons you want to keep that gravy train going. Efficiency has to happen. Professional clients. The office serves mortgage professionals, attorneys, and title companies. When you talk about efficiency, when I spent my 20 years in the mortgage business, I rarely called a recorder's office when I needed something. I called a title person. I had it attached to an email in less than 5 to 10 minutes. That's efficiency.
Thank you, Mr. Bednar. And we will start with you for the next question. Question from the audience. The recorder's office already has used advanced technology to process documents, both recording and retrieving. Please tell us how you would do things differently and at what cost savings.
When you talk about cost savings in administrative offices, you're talking about letting computers do more so that you don't have the heavy repeated payrolls week after week, month after month, year after year. That's the key to efficiency. That's why Tazewell County, Kendall County, and now McLean County is doing this. And in Lake County, we have a AAA bond rating. It's due to the Republican leadership that's on the county board right now. When you've been in office for 16 years, you make friends on both sides of the aisle. People like Mary Ellen. And if Mary Ellen's reelected, this office is not going to be consolidated. It's not even going to come up for discussion. That's one of the reasons I'm running. It's the only way we're going to get the job done. If you need to change things in government, you need to change the people running it.
Thank you. Ms. Vanderventer, the recorder's office already has used advanced technology to process documents, both recording and retrieving. Please tell us how you would do things differently upcoming and at what cost savings.
I guess I need to just take a step back here because he continues to talk about merging these offices. And in Illinois, there's only 23 counties that qualify to combined offices, and that means that they are over 60,000 in population. Lake County is over 700,000 in population, and we're the third largest county in the state. There is no county administrative effort and no county board effort to merge these offices whatsoever. It is a moot point, and it's moot because the recorder's office is not the cash cow. It is one of the biggest revenue producers for the county. If you have 2 Walgreens in your city and one Walgreens brings in 7 times the profit of the other store, it is this store that you are going to leave alone, leave its location, and let it continue to produce for the taxpayers of Lake County. That is the recorder's office.
Thank you, Ms. Vanderventer. And now, we're going to have now our final question before we get to the closing statements. Ms. Vanderventer, you'll be first.
Okay.
This is a long question, might need to say it twice. The county has instituted the Lake County Performance Management Program in several departments. It provides a way to collect data, which are then used to drive decision-making. As examples, the Planning and Building Department uses the program to track compliance with code violation complaints and has improved speed of enforcement and led to quicker demolitions of unsafe structures. The Water Department uses it to track leaks and breaks over 290 miles of water mains and to justify new pipe purchases. Would you consider this type of data-driven system to make decisions within your office?
I'm not even sure how to answer that question. The recorder's office has 26 employees. All of the data that we have, the 7 million documents in our office dating back to 1844, have all been scanned, and they are all available in our office and on the internet for a subscription basis. Everything has been indexed, scanned. You can still come in and use the beautiful old-fashioned books. We love when you do that. But everything, all of our data is already in the system. That system is shared with all the other county departments. The recorder's office is the very first place that everything starts. When you record your deed, all that information is funneled out to all the other departments. That's how you get taxpayer information. That's how you know your legal description of your property. Everything begins in the recorder's office, and we have a terrific data capturing system, so there's no need to change, in my opinion.
Thank you, Ms. Vanderventer. Would you like to hear the question?
I
again?
would like to hear it.
The county has instituted the Lake County Performance Management Program in several departments. It provides a way to collect data, which are then used to drive decision-making. As examples, the Planning and Building Department uses the program to track compliance with code violation complaints and has improved speed of enforcement and led to quicker demolitions of unsafe structures. The Water Department uses it to track leaks and breaks over 290 miles of water mains and to justify new pipe purchases. Would you consider this type of data-driven system to make decisions within your office?
I think that's a system that I would have to study after the election and see if it's worthwhile, if maybe there's some cost savings there. I find it fascinating that when you look at a county of Lake County, which is over 700,000 people, you do need some data management systems. Those are business systems. Large corporations, even medium-sized corporations, realize the value of using programs like that. So with 12 million documents, or whatever that number was, that's been recorded going back to
7 million?
1840, yeah, there's some tool value there. So I would definitely want to look at that program and see if it's something worthwhile.
Thank you, Mr. Bednar. We will now do our closing statements. We begin with you, Mr. Bednar. You have a minute and a half.
Thank you again to the sponsors that provided this event today. My background's pretty straightforward. I've spent my life in banking, 30 years of it. I've dealt with homeowners, mortgage holders, lien holders, mechanics liens, almost that entire time. That's what this job's about. I think that's one of the reasons people are surprised when I go door to door and they're like, do we really elect somebody to this? But all across Illinois, we're seeing what's happening. The Recorder of Deeds is becoming an antiquated relic. The 60,000 population threshold for the office to be created by statute predates the invention of computers by many, many decades. When that statute was passed, they had no idea of the efficiencies that would come with computers. I'd bet there's not more than 1 or 2 people in this room that don't own at least one computer. Maybe they own 2 or 3. We've got smartphones. The technology today eliminates the high expense of a lot of labor. That's what we're missing here. And when you combine administrative duties in one office with the administrative duties in another, you do get efficiencies. You don't have to staff 2 counters. You don't have 2 treasury functions going on. You don't have 2 different cost centers to deal with when it comes to paying bills and taking care of expenses. If you want to see more efficient government, Bob Bednar is your choice for Recorder of Deeds.
Thank you, Mr. Bednar. Ms. Vanderventer.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for attending this evening. It was really lovely of you to do this, and we thank all of the sponsors here tonight. In closing, I would just add that my opponent offered no new ideas, no plan, no vision for the Recorder's Office. I would also add that much of our work is guided by state statute, and my opponent missed his statutory deadline this week to file his campaign paperwork. You can't miss a deadline in the Recorder's Office. My goal is to continue to provide top-notch service for the people of Lake County. Since 1996, I have consistently been endorsed in every election by every newspaper in Lake County, including the Chicago Tribune, the Daily Herald, the New Sun, the Pioneer Press, and the Lake County Journal. I respectfully ask for your continued support, and I respectfully ask for your vote on Election Day. Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Ms. Vanderventer. And this now concludes the forum for Recorder of Deeds, and now the audience may applaud for the candidate.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
We will now take a 5-minute break to make the changes for the next forum. Thank you. timers are ready. We have everybody else. Very good. Thank you. There are 2 candidates on the election ballot for the office of the Clerk of the Circuit Court of Lake County. There is no incumbent. Rupam Dave is the Democratic candidate. Keith Brin is the Republican candidate. It was decided prior with the coin flip, decided to have that Mr. Brin would do the first opening.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you very much for your invitation to be here today. My name's Keith Brin. I'm currently the Chief Deputy Clerk of the Circuit Court, and I'm running to be your next Clerk of the Circuit Court. This race is about experience and vision. For the last 3.5 years, I've been in the Circuit Clerk's office. Prior to that, I practiced law and I was in the business world. I've been doing everything in the Circuit Clerk's office that I'll be doing as your Circuit Clerk on day 1. Everything from learning how to be a Deputy Clerk of the Circuit Court. It's not something they taught us in law school. Also managing the office, strategic and operationally, and that includes the budget. In fact, I just went before our county board with our budget, and I'm proud to report to you all, as I was proud to report to them, that our office is in wonderful financial shape. We actually have excess revenues in the office. Excess revenues means we don't have use of any tax dollars in the office, both operationally and strategically. That means for all of our technology upgrades as well. And that's the focus of my campaign at the end of the day with vision. Moving the office into the 21st century. Technological upgrades are imperative in the office to make our office operate better inside the office and better service you as our customers, the people of Lake County. And that's what we're going to do. I ask for your vote, and I look forward to answering your questions here today.
Thank you, Mr. Brin. Ms. Dave, you have 2 minutes.
Thank you so much. I'm very privileged to be in front of you today, and I feel humbled to be speaking with you. More than that, I'm very grateful that you are here because this is a critical part of our democratic process. So thank you so much for coming and listening to the candidates speak in terms of what their vision is. I would like to tell you a little bit about myself. I am a long-term Lake County resident. I graduated from Libertyville High School. I have an economics degree from Loyola University and a law degree from Loyola University. I have managed a multi-million-dollar company successfully, as I may add, and I am a practicing attorney and a small business owner and have been for a long time. What I would like to do for you is I have a plan and a vision. My plan and vision is this. A lot of people don't know what this office does, but this office is critical to gaining access to the legal system. I want to make this office consumer friendly. I want to make this office modernized, brought into the 21st century. I want the computer system to be consumer friendly, and I want you all to be able to access your cases, to be able to pay your fines online. And certainly we have to have some safeguards, and we will do that. But that's what I will do. And it's been a long time coming. A lot of counties have already implemented this. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Dave. This forum, as the Recorder of Deeds, is a compact 20 minutes. We will now begin with the questions, beginning with Ms. Dave. You have 1 minute. In some counties, one can file a case or appearance in any of its branch facilities. In Lake County, probate cases must be filed in Park City. Adoptions and juvenile must be filed in Vernon Hills. Is this efficient, or would you change it?
That is a very good question, and I would absolutely change it. We need to be able to have a computer system and a system whereby we can file cases in any branch court or at the Waukegan court. And a lot of counties do that because it's efficient. And that's what we're talking about, is efficiency. Efficiency is important for the taxpayer because it saves you money. It saves you time. It saves you time off of work. And it saves your attorney's time. So yes, I am absolutely for being able to file, as other counties do, in any, I'm sorry, yeah, stop.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Ms. Dave. Mr. Brin, do you want me to repeat the question?
Please.
Yes. In some counties, one can file a case or appearance in any of its branch facilities. In Lake County, probate cases must be filed in Park City. Adoptions and juvenile must be filed in Vernon Hills. Is this efficient, or would you change it?
Well, to start with, internally, operations are such that because the Supreme Court relies on us using paper as the official record, unfortunately, paper has to start somewhere. And as a result, because of our file folders and simple logistics, we like to keep our files as close to the actual court where they'll be heard as possible. But you are correct. To me, certainly as a customer and as an attorney, this is not efficient, which is why we're trying to put into place a technological architecture that will span the entirety of the office. This will allow people, litigants, attorneys, anyone with who can have access to the system and who would normally use our system, to file cases from anywhere. And that includes not only from any single courthouse, but from library computers that are internet capable, from their homes, from their offices, and do everything they can do from the comfort of that facility, as they could when the office was open from 8:30 to 5 in front of the counter at that particular location. These are some of the things we want to push forward to make the office more efficient and more accessible.
Thank you, Mr. Brin. Mr. Brin, you'll be give the first answer on the next question. What technological changes do you plan if elected?
Actually, quite a few, and we've already begun doing them. When I first came to the office approximately 3.5 years ago, not only did I realize that what we could do with an already wonderful base of operations in the office was improve it with technology, but the technology could be improved not only internally, but externally. So what we did was we brought in all our customers. It's my philosophy that the best opportunities in government are to better serve your customers, not only push forward technology that could be useful inside the office. So we brought in the Bar Association, we brought in the judges, we brought in people who use the system and asked them, what do they want to see out of our system? How can we better serve them, the public, via technology? And we've designed from the ground up what is now being hailed and profiled as a state-of-the-art system. While we wait for implementation, in fact, it's gotten national interest from different courtrooms across the country, potentially as a way for courtrooms across the country to bridge the gap from old technology to state-of-the-art technology and bring courtrooms to the 21st century.
Thank you, Mr. Brin. Ms. Dave, what technological changes do you plan if elected?
Thank you for asking. First of all, I beg to differ. I beg to differ with my opponent's statements. First of all, here we go again. We have an election cycle, and now we want to make changes. And we have had many, many, many times, years, to make these changes, and they haven't been done. And if you support me, I will make those changes on day one. I will start making those changes on day one. We do not have a state-of-the-art system. We have a system that is antiquated, and with respect to my opponent, I want to say that it needed to be changed a while ago, while he had been a deputy.
Thank you, Ms. Dave.
Thank you.
Ms. Dave, you'll take the next question first.
Yes, ma'am.
Who would be your deputy? What duties would the deputy have that are different from yours?
I have not thought about who would be my deputy. I think that it is a very important position, and I do not give that position freely. Therefore, it would be a posted position, and that's what I believe in. I believe in posted positions. I do not believe in no bid contracts. I believe that people should earn what they strive for. So therefore, I cannot name a deputy. The other part of the question was?
What duties would the deputy have that are different from
Well, the
yours?
duties would be what Mr. Brin should have been doing, actually. The duties are to...
Thank you, Ms. Dave.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Brin?
You know, I'm very concentrating on winning this election. While we're certainly confident in what the experience and vision that we're bringing forward as a choice for the people of Lake County, it's certainly something that I haven't put really a moment's thought into. But from my own experience and what I know of the office, the clerk of the circuit court is so involved not only in things in the courthouse, with the judges, with the litigants, with the attorneys, with policy, with strategy, with managing the office, 5 courthouses, almost 150 people, more than a $12 million budget. The clerk of the circuit court can't be everywhere at every meeting where they need to be involved, and it's important. So the chief deputy has to be able to be there to represent the clerk of the circuit court. I'm proud to say that I've been able to do so, and honored to do so for Sally as the clerk of the circuit court for the last 3.5 years, and I would hope that I'd be able to find someone to be able to fill those roles. And it will be a challenge, but it's certainly not something I've put a tremendous amount of thought into yet, but it certainly will be something that is worthy of that thought and a great deal of search once I'm your clerk of your circuit court.
Thank you, Mr. Brin. And now we'll start with you again. Mr. Brin, should court records be accessible online? Why or why not? If so, what records should be available?
At first blush, as an attorney and as a customer, the answer is emphatically yes. What I've learned being in the office, I'd never practiced criminal law, but there are expungements, there are sealings, there are different kinds of things that affect court records down the line. And what I've come to learn as someone who uses the internet is that once something is out on the internet and is out for public consumption, it's very difficult to pull back. So there are definitely policy considerations to be made. While our records are open and accessible in most circumstances to the public, you can come on in and take a look at those records. Inside of me, I want that accessibility for the public. But then we have to balance the issue of people who would use those records to do harm to their friends, to their neighbors, to people who they would just harass because they have a divorce case or a criminal charge. So this is something that we're working on with the judges and with the Bar Association to develop a good policy going forward, a safe policy, a conservative policy, but one that will serve the interests not only of the consumers, but of the court system.
Thank you, Mr. Brin. Ms. Dave?
Yes, thank you very much. I take exception to my opponent's comments because, you see, there were attorneys that were given access to online cases. There were attorneys specially picked, and the judges, the chief judge found out about it and said, hey, you got to stop this. And basically, my opponent said, stop me. And he was stopped. So, yes, I believe in online access. I believe in online access to everybody, but with some safeguards, because there have to be safeguards. And I have a whole list of companies that I've already contacted that we can deal with, and we can make a very nice system where you are benefited. So help me to help you. Support me. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Dave, and we'll start with you with the next question. What is the biggest challenge for clerks assigned to courtrooms? How would you address that issue?
In my opinion, at this point, the biggest challenge is the lack of technology. Technology is going to help the clerks. We have a wonderful, wonderful bunch of clerks. They work very hard, they treat people well, but they need help. And the help they need is technology. Now, let me explain something to you. You know, in your own household, you don't put good money after bad, right? So why would we do that? Why have we been doing that for so many years, 3.5 years, decades? Why would we do that? I'm not going to do that. I understand economic frugality. I don't buy anything that's not on sale. I don't. I want to get the best product for the best price. That's what I will do for you.
Thank you, Ms. Dave. Mr. Brin, what is the biggest challenge for clerks assigned to courtrooms? How would you address that issue?
Actually, there are several challenges, and our clerks do marvelously at handling them every day. And it's basically a juggling act. Not only do our clerks have to understand and be really, really good at what they have to do for the circuit clerk's office, they are essentially a customer resource right there in the courtroom for the judges, for the litigants, for the attorneys, in keeping track of important documents, in entering documents, in calling up information for the judges and litigants, in answering different kinds of questions, in making referrals down to the clerk's office, or letting people know what they should and should not be doing inside of court, and what has to be the purview of the judge's decision, and what they should go back and talk to their attorneys about. Frankly, our clerks are absolutely wonderful at juggling all those balls in the air. And what we're going to do is bring in technology to help them out, so that there's more accessibility to information from litigants, from judges, from attorneys. So a lot of those questions will be diverted elsewhere. But I will tell you, whenever there's human interaction, especially in our courtrooms and with our lawyers and our judges, in very, very difficult situations in court, our clerks will always have to juggle those balls.
Thank you very much, Mr. Brin. This will be our last question before the closing statements. I'm going to start with you, Mr. Brin. What are your top 3 goals you have for this office?
Top 3. The first is to utilize technology to make things more efficient inside the office. And that includes helping to get the Supreme Court, in our best ability, to see the light, to let us go paperless. We've been asking to do it for years. The Supreme Court is very fond of the official record being of paper. I think we can do it as a paper-on-demand system or as a paperless system, much in the way that you all don't send faxes anymore. You send things by PDF and email. You send pictures by email. You don't really send them in the mail anymore. The second thing is we can make things more efficient using technology for people outside the office. Accessibility to our court records, more secure access to our court records, and accessibility 24 hours a day to what they need to do, not just 8:30 to 5, Monday through Friday when the office is open. The third thing is to maintain the transparency and accountability we have in the office, being accountable to you all for every dollar and every decision we make, and presenting our budget to the county board every year so that we can tell you how we plan on spending the user fees in the office and what we plan on doing for the year ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Brin. Ms. Dave.
Yes, thank you very much. Actually, everything that my opponent has said is what he has not done and is what I want to do. I want to create transparency so that on the day that I take office, you know exactly where money is going. We're not going to be doing business as usual. There has been plenty of time, decades, and in Mr. Brin's administration as deputy clerk, 3.5+ years. So we want to make a change. We want to go forward. We want to progress. And so what I would do is make it transparent for you, make it convenient for you. I want to create a system. I want to have a bidding contest, not a no-bid contest, a bidding contest where we get the best technology for the best buck.
Thank you, Ms. Dave. We'll now have our closing statements, and we will begin with Mr. Brin. You have 1.5 minutes.
Thank you. And thank you all again for inviting me here today to talk about this very important race. This race is about experience and vision. For the last 3.5 years, I've been working in the office. I've been doing the things that I will be doing as your circuit clerk on day one. There's no learning curve, which means I can better serve you right away. And it's a continuation of what we're trying to do now. Working with our customers, working with judges, working with lawyers, working with everyone involved in the system, with police departments, with mayors, with everyone who the court system touches, and it's an awful lot of people. We want to make sure we're doing it right. It's more than just the four walls of the courthouse. We are involved in the community at large, and everything the court touches, which, as you can imagine, is about everything in our society. Lake County is a very big place. We're the third biggest county. We have 5 courthouses, near 150 people, more than a $12 million budget. We also have to be fiscally responsible, and I will tell you, we expect to return in excess of $2 million back to the county board on money we are not using in the office. These are user fees. We use no tax dollars for anything we're doing in the office, and that includes our vision in the office, which is bringing technology to the office, upgrading the office, taking what is already working very well with our customer service and bringing it to that next level so we can better serve the people of Lake County while remaining accountable and transparent and involving all of you in our operations. I'd invite you down to the office to see what we do, see how hard our clerks work, see what it takes in our office to get the job done. You will marvel the same way I did the day I got there. Thank you. I ask for your support.
Thank you, Mr. Brin. Ms. Dave, you have a minute and a half.
Thank you very much. Thank you all for being here. I'm privileged to be speaking in front of you. I, again, beg to differ with my opponent. We do not have an efficient system. We have a dinosaur of a computer system for which millions of dollars have been spent putting a bandage on a system that is going to be obsolete. So, for example, if you have a VHS system in your home and it's not working, are you going to put money towards that, or are you going to get a DVD system and make it work for a long time? That's the issue here. We want to make the front end work and the long-term work, and that is sound economic policy. That's what I want to do for you. I would like for you to support me and walk with me so that we can make things better. I want you to have a convenience factor with using this office. I would like you not to take time off of work to pay fines. I want you to be able to deal with your cases online. I would like your attorneys to look at your cases, and I'm asking for your support, and I ask you to help me to help you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Dave. And this concludes the forum, and the audience may applaud the candidates. Thank you. Thank you very much. We're now going to take a 10-minute break, and if the candidates for a state's attorney are here, I'd ask them to come forward. Yes, we will start this forum in 2 minutes. Thank you. If you can gather everyone from the hall. Chris Kennedy is the Democratic candidate. Mike Nerheim is the Republican candidate. Audience questions are being collected at this time. If you would like to submit one, raise your hand, and one of the volunteers will bring you a card and a pencil, and then you can raise your hand again when you're ready. Questions must be for the issues, not directed towards one candidate. This forum will run 45 minutes. Both candidates will have opening statements of 2 minutes in duration. And then during the forum, they will have a minute and a half to answer the questions and a minute and a half for the closing statement. And I will be happy to repeat any questions for the candidates during this time. And we will start now with, we'll begin with the first opening statement, which will be given by Mr. Kennedy. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for coming. I appreciate the opportunity to be heard. I'm Chris Kennedy, and I'm running for State's Attorney of Lake County. I'm running because I see a system that is broken, that needs fundamental changes at the very core. And I believe that I'm the only person who can do that. And I'll tell you why. For one thing, I have a track record of 18 years of experience, not only as a prosecutor, but as a private attorney whose private practice has been committed to doing the right thing for people who are victimized. I've taken on people who were victimized by public officials in both parties. I have a track record of independence, integrity, and broad experience in all of the things that a state's attorney is likely to ever encounter, which includes not just the legal realm. Although the legal realm, I have handled multi-million-dollar trials, jury trials, appeals in Lake County, in Cook County, in federal courts, in other states as well. I've supervised other attorneys. I've won major cases, and I've taken on people of both parties whenever it was appropriate to do, because I don't ask who someone is or who they know. I ask whether they did something wrong and whether it can be proven in a court of law. Now, beyond the legal realm, I've also taken on things that were not my job to do. I've written the law for children and adults with developmental disabilities in the state of Illinois. I took on a cause that took 6 years of hundreds of hours per year, but I've written 16 different laws that are now on the books. That's a track record of independence, of leadership, that is ultimately what is needed. But I also have a personal reason for what motivates me to leave private practice and go into the job of a prosecutor again. And that is because ultimately the prosecutor's job is public safety. My family has been deeply touched by violent crime. My cousin was murdered, and my daughter is named after her, my daughter with developmental disabilities. That experience helps me to see the perspective and the need to get it right.
Thank you, Mr. Kennedy. Mr. Nerheim, you have 2 minutes.
Thank you, and thank you for being here. My name is Mike Nerheim, and I am running for Lake County State's Attorney. This is an incredibly important office, as you know, which is why you're here. Mike Waller's been the State's Attorney for 22 years. He's going to retire. There's going to be a new State's Attorney, and it is about trust. It is about somebody that is going to represent all the people in this county. I've made it my practice, my entire legal career, to spend every moment in Lake County practicing law. Now, I have practiced civil law, but the bulk of my experience is criminal law on both sides. I've been a prosecutor. I've worked in that office. I've handled thousands of very serious cases on behalf of victims and on behalf of defendants. I've also been a criminal defense attorney. I go to court every day. In fact, I was in court this morning representing regular people against the state's attorney's office to make sure they're treated fairly. The reputation of that office has to be restored. Now, I've been a private attorney. I've been a prosecutor. I also teach. I teach evidence at Columbia College of Missouri. We've a lot of talk about DNA. I've prosecuted with DNA. I've defended with DNA. I teach DNA. I'm also on the Bar Foundation, which is the charitable arm of the Bar Association. I'm a teen court judge. And I've also worked with the Stabin Center, which is a homeless center for women and children. So I've been active in the Lake County community. I was born and raised here. I want to restore the office, the reputation of that office. I want to tackle gangs, guns, and drugs, which are terrorizing our community right here in Lake County. And I also want to propose a program which I put out a couple weeks ago, which will help alleviate overcrowding in our jail and in our court system, giving those first-time nonviolent offenders a second chance and allowing some of those cases to be removed from our court system so we can focus our time on prosecuting very serious cases. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nerheim. We will now begin with the questions, beginning with Mr. Nerheim. You'll have a minute and a half to answer this question. We understand that currently there are no female investigators and only a handful of people of color working in the state's attorney's office. What will you do to increase diversity and make your workforce more reflective of the community?
That's a very good question. That's a very important issue. The state's attorney's office, there are 73 assistant state's attorneys, 143 people, 10 investigators, 16 victim counselors. And as you said in that question, there are no female investigators. There are 2 African-American assistant state's attorneys and 1 Latino. That does not reflect the Lake County population. Prosecutors serve the public. Prosecutors are the attorneys for the people of this county. And when I spoke earlier, I talked about trust. Everybody in this county has to trust the state's attorney's office and has to trust that those people working in that office reflect them and represent them. I will actively recruit in the minority communities and female investigators to make sure that the representation of that office is reflective of our Lake County community. We have a situation now where the state's attorney's office is no longer a stepping stone career. People want to work there, they want to work there their whole careers. Very qualified people. We can go out and recruit the best and the brightest from all sectors, men, women, and people of all different nationalities and colors, to come in and represent you, the people of this county. And I'll do that. I pledge to do that. I've spent a lot of time working with different members of the community, different community leaders, and this is something that has to be addressed because it gets to the fundamental issue, which is trust.
Thank you, Mr. Nerheim. Mr. Kennedy.
Thank you. The Chicago Sun-Times, almost a year ago now, wrote an editorial about the state's attorney's office in which they concluded, and I'm paraphrasing, that when you see people of like mind, people who all agree with each other, people who think the same way, view the world in the same way, that's how you can have a track record like this office has had, which has been national news and actually international news for getting it wrong in case after case after case, and in some cases they've been ridiculed for absurd conclusions, and even the appellate court called some of their conclusions absurd. How do you get that way? Well, from having the same people, the like-mindedness, the friends and family hiring practices, the hiring of people based not on what they know, but on who they know. So the first order of business for me, in addition to the Conviction Integrity Unit, which I'm sure we'll get to later, is to have a professional hiring practice. We need real policies. We need practices that are based on making sure that we recruit the best, because there is a market out there. We can hire plenty of people who may not have been available when the market was a lot better. And actively recruiting is people from differing viewpoints, differing communities is a core value. And I will actively, proactively recruit people who are not only from the African American community and the Latino community, but who also disagree and present different viewpoints. I think there's too much like-mindedness within the office, and that's a problem.
Thank you, Mr. Kennedy. The next question will actually, the candidates will be allowed 2 minutes to answer. And Mr. Kennedy, you will be first on this. You'll have 2 minutes. Please explain how you will work to ensure wrongful convictions do not occur.
I've studied this for a very long time, and the reason I decided to run was because I saw the appalling condition of some of these cases. And when I announced, the first thing I announced was that the #1 order of business is to set up within the office a conviction integrity unit. This has been done in other places. This is something that has been studied very extensively. Ultimately, it is the prosecutor's responsibility to make decisions on even closed cases to ensure that you uphold the special ethical duty of a prosecutor, which is to do justice. And that covers closed cases as well as active ones. So what I propose is based on what other jurisdictions have done, is set up a unit within the office that is independent in the sense that it works outside of others, and it's to oversee the activities as well of others within the office. So first, there's going to be a retrospective review of any case in which somebody's claimed actual innocence, and that can be brought up by the defense or even by the prosecutor, because ultimately it's our job. I've talked to people at some of these wrongful convictions projects, and I've told them I intend to put them out of business in Lake County because this is our job, to make sure we have the right people. So I'm going to bring in someone. I'm going to publicly post this position. This will not be, as my opponent has proposed, a panel of experts that he has already named in secret, without any authority to do so, but also that would do his job for him. And that's what I'm running to do, is to be able to make these decisions, because that's what we need, is a change in leadership, not an artificial program to provide outside, allegedly. And another problem with that program is that when asked during the endorsement session of the Daily Herald recently, he was asked how are these volunteers going to be indemnified, and he said, well, they'll have to be sworn in. Well, there goes their independence, because once they're sworn in, they're under the state's attorney. So that's why every jurisdiction that has addressed this problem has addressed it through a conviction integrity unit that provides oversight, not only looking back but going forward and making sure that the best practices are done in Lake County.
Thank you, Mr. Kennedy. Mr. Nerheim.
Well, this is one of the single most important issues in this campaign. It's about restoring trust to that office. And we've had 4 cases that have been in the press with regard to wrongful convictions. That's 4 cases too many. We cannot allow one case, one wrongful conviction. I've dedicated my career to fighting wrongful convictions. I practice criminal law. I go to court every day representing regular people, making sure they're treated fairly against the state's attorney's office. I stand up to that office every day in the courthouse. 3 things. 1, we have to improve training from the top to the bottom. Every prosecutor in that office will be consistently trained and retrained as DNA and other forensic sciences change, because they change all the time. Secondly, we have to change the culture. The culture of that office has to be one in which every prosecutor goes to court every day with the motivation to seek justice, not just a conviction. We're not keeping track of how many cases each other wins. This is about seeking justice and doing what's right, not convicting people. And I have proposed an independent outside panel to come in and look at these cases. It's not a secret panel. It's a panel that will be divulged. I've promised the people that are part of this panel that I wouldn't release their names until after the election, because they don't want to be politicized. But this will be transparent. And I have the courage to know that I want people that are going to make tough decisions. They're going to make those recommendations and bring a fresh set of eyes to these cases, all these cases, and future cases. The decision will be mine. This is not an opportunity for me to try and put the decision on an outside panel. I want an effective, independent review of legal minds that have nothing to do with the state's attorney's office or Lake County. But I will be the one, as your state's attorney, to make those decisions and to take the responsibility for those decisions.
Thank you, Mr. Nerheim. And we'll start with you on the next question related. Millions of dollars have been paid in claims to those wrongfully convicted. Do you think there should be a monetary cap on these types of claims?
No, I mean, if there's a claim that's a valid claim, you know, I met a gentleman the other day at a lunch that my opponent and I were both at. This man spent 35 years in prison, and he was wrongfully convicted. 35 years of his life. I don't know how you put a dollar amount on that. So if somebody is wrongfully convicted, if they are due a dollar amount judgment, they should receive it.
Thank you. Mr. Kennedy.
I don't think that you can arbitrarily cap a number on something like that. You know, I think the cost in terms of someone's years in their life is very difficult to measure. But of course, you know, I've handled cases not necessarily involving that type of damage, but involving other similar types of damages that go into the tens of millions of dollars. And there are experts that will testify in those cases, I'm sure, that we can deal with. And I've dealt with those cases. I've handled them. I've defended them before. And, you know, I want to point out that none of this should ever have happened. You know, none of this should have occurred if the office was run in the right way. If there was disagreement within the office, it seems as if nobody felt the ability to express it, or if they did express it, it certainly wasn't listened to. So I think culturally, ultimately, that's what we need to change. And, you know, I've been outside that office for 14 years, longer than my opponent's been an attorney. And I don't have the personal and professional ties. I don't spend every single day in that office. And that's a good thing because, you know, frankly, the practice of criminal law, while technically on opposite sides of the courtroom, involves in 97% of the cases, and we've looked them up, 97% of my opponent's cases are pled out. They're plea deals. So to say that you're going up against the office all the time may technically be correct, but ultimately you need to be independent of that entire culture.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Kennedy. Mr. Kennedy, you'll do the next question, and we are back to a minute and a half for the questions now. How will you improve efficiency in the office? Can the timeline be shortened and cases still be properly researched? Are there different benchmarks other than time that demonstrate improved efficiency?
Efficiency is a major problem because, as the saying goes, justice delayed is justice denied. The office needs to be more proactive and also fight defense tactics to continue cases, because what happens very often, probably in most real difficult cases, is the defense seeks to delay the trial and the time in which a case will be brought, because memory fades, certain things may change, the outrage over the crime may diminish. That's why it's critically important to be proactive in pushing the timeline. Criminal cases move very fast if the prosecutor and the defense and the court decide to make them move faster. So a couple of things that I've proposed that will assist in the efficiency. First of all, as part of the Conviction Integrity Unit, which I forgot to mention, I also do have an outside advisory panel as to policies, not as to cases. You can't hand that off, but policies and procedures. There are best practices around the country. One of them is vertical prosecution, and that means for certain types of cases, the same prosecutor handles the case from beginning to end. So what I proposed is a sex crimes division that is particular to those kinds of cases, because those are extremely difficult cases to handle, and if you get it wrong, the consequences are devastating, because those offenders tend to re-offend much more than others. Plus, you have victims who are uniquely victimized and traumatized in a way that many other victims are not. So that's why it's imperative that the office commit the resources to working up those cases from beginning to end. And that's why I'm going to have this special dedicated unit to foster that.
Thank you, Mr. Kennedy. Mr. Nerheim.
I've spoken to some of the judges in Lake County about this issue, and there's a new program that they are planning, which is a different tracking system. So certain cases where there's going to be a negotiated plea early on in the case, those will be in a fast-track courtroom. Other cases will be in a standard courtroom, and there are cases just by their nature, murder cases, financial cases, white-collar cases that do take time, and those cases will take a traditional track, and I support that theory. Another thing that I've proposed, as I indicated earlier, is a program that I refer to as the Alternative Prosecution Program. And what this does is it allows for first-time nonviolent offenders, with the consent of the victim and the local agency, an opportunity to do public service, pay their debt to society, get treatment, go to school, get a job, stay out of trouble. And if you do those things, those cases will be dismissed. So we can divert some of those cases out of the courthouse, so the prosecutors in the courthouse are working more efficiently with their time. When I was a prosecutor and I'd go to court with a felony caseload, I would literally go into court with a shopping cart full of felony cases, all different types of cases. We need to allow our prosecutors more time to effectively deal with those cases and to represent those victims.
Thank you, Mr. Nerheim. And we'll start with you for the next question. What is your vision for a child protection division?
Well, there is, the Children's Advocacy Center is in Gurnee, and the thought behind that is to allow, initially it was developed to allow an opportunity for child victims of those cases to have a more comfortable environment in where they would be interviewed by law enforcement. I spent a lot of time prosecuting child sex cases. They're very difficult cases to prosecute from an emotional standpoint for obvious reasons. But I do support that group, and there is a prosecutor in that group right now that is involved in the vertical prosecution model that my opponent spoke of. and I do support that model. And not just for sex cases, but all serious cases. Prosecutors that are going to try the case should be involved in that case from the beginning all the way up through and including the trial. But we have to make sure that our child victims are being represented. Those are very serious and important cases. And I would support the Child Advocacy Center, help increase that. The attorney that I spoke to or spoke about works on a grant. That grant's going to expire, and there's no funding for that grant. So we have to figure out a situation going into the office, how we're going to keep that one person, that very important person in that office, and add to that person. Because this is a job that one person can't handle himself. We have to add more prosecutors into the ad center and investigators so we can make sure that those cases are being handled properly.
Thank you, Mr. Nerheim. Mr. Kennedy.
Thank you. The dedication of a single attorney to the Children's Advocacy Center is a very positive step, and it's been done only recently, and that's what I want to expand upon with the dedicated sex crimes unit, because that attorney currently works on the workup, the investigation and the charging only. Then that case will go off to another prosecutor, and very often I've heard from victims that you get handed off, and that's where you can fall through the cracks, because if someone is not committed to your case from beginning to end, that's where the case can be dropped. So that's why it's critical to expand that unit and really commit the resources. So what I've proposed is transferring at least 2 attorneys into a dedicated sex crimes unit that will handle only those cases, which allows those prosecutors for a period of time, at least a couple of years, to develop the kinds of skills that are needed, because they don't teach you that in law school. But it also commits to you, a career path that would allow you to do that and develop your skills in your career as an attorney, while at the same time really making a difference for people who are victimized. And the victim's perspective is very dear to me, because I've been on that side, and you see how the system alienates people, and that's why you have to take extra steps and make the kind of commitment in a structural way, like I've proposed, to combat that natural tendency.
Thank you, Mr. Kennedy. Mr. Kennedy, what is your position regarding Lake County's responsibility to refer local residents accused of a crime to immigration and naturalization if they are not in this country legally?
Well, I think, first of all, it should be noted that, the state's attorney's office has a limited role in the enforcement of federal issues, and immigration and ICE are federal issues. And the other thing that ought to be noted is that your personal views should not overtake your obligation and your duty under the law. So, I think as a country, as a nation, we need to have comprehensive immigration reform so that it does make sense across jurisdictions, whether it's federal and state, exactly who is responsible for what. So when someone commits violent crimes, then obviously those people who are here without documentation, ought to be turned over to ICE. Now, what's happened in other jurisdictions is you've seen, for example, the sheriff deciding not to follow federal law. And I think the way to combat that is to really change the law for the better, and I'd certainly be an advocate for doing that. I have a track record of having done that as well. So, I think that's my perspective on that, and I think, I can really be a leader in terms of reforming it, because that is another case in which there's a lot of inefficiency. And then you also have people who don't have the ability to get a driver's license or drive an insured car, and that causes problems for everyone. I've represented a lot of people who have been the victim of negligence where the person had no insurance. And
Thank you, Mr. Kennedy. Mr. Nerheim.
Well, I agree with my opponent on this issue. We do need immigration reform on a national level, and there's talk about handling this state by state. I think our national government needs to take the lead on this. But what we can do as local law enforcement, as local leaders, is at the very least follow the law. And if somebody commits a violent felony in our community and they're not a legal resident, I think we need to notify the immigration authorities and let the immigration authorities do their job. And I'm not in agreement with certain programs that ignore that don't follow the law. And as state's attorney, you are the chief law enforcement officer for the county. And it's your responsibility to make sure all the laws are followed, whether you personally agree with them or not. I don't believe in legislation from the judiciary. I will make sure that the immigration laws with respect to state law are followed. And again, if somebody's in our country illegally and they're harming our community, they're going to be prosecuted, and immigration is going to be notified, and they're going to do their job.
Thank you, Mr. Nerheim. Mr. Nerheim will answer first on the next question. Since you both have worked at the Lake County State's Attorney's Office as prosecutors, and violent crime has a devastating effect on the community, what is your record in handling cases against violent offenders?
Well, I've worked in every division of the state's attorney's office, from traffic to felony prosecution, and I spent time, a good amount of time in each division. And the way you typically advance in that office is you start in traffic, you go to misdemeanor, felony review, juvenile, drugs, and I've prosecuted in all those divisions. And I've prosecuted very serious crimes. And there's a difference between saying I've prosecuted a case or I've handled a case, because if you work in felony review, for instance, where cases come in every day and you're standing in court and you're handling a case at a time, you're simply passing that case along to the next day, and you could theoretically say you've handled thousands of cases. But I've actually had case loads where I'm responsible for hundreds of cases that are assigned specifically to me. Cases ranging from all different types of cases: murder cases, rape cases, violent felony cases, drug cases, and I've prosecuted all those cases to trial. I know what it's like to sit at night with the family member of a murder victim waiting for a jury verdict to return, because I've prosecuted murder cases. I've prosecuted rape cases. I've been in those courtrooms handling those cases from a prosecutor's perspective and also from a defense attorney's perspective. It's important to note that I go to court every day as a defense attorney, representing everybody in this county against the state's attorney's office, which is vital, because we have to make sure we're prosecuting the right people for the right reasons.
Thank you, Mr. Nerheim. Mr. Kennedy.
Thank you. When I left the state's attorney's office, the last trial I had was an armed violence case in which the defendant was sentenced to 16 years, and I haven't looked him up, but I think he is still behind bars. You know, I did get an opportunity to handle a large caseload of felony cases, trials, and you know, I don't presume to represent to you that I've handled every single case in the world, because I've handled murder cases, but not done trials. And you know, I think we need to be careful about the phrasing which was brought up. I mean, prosecuted, yes, I have prosecuted the entire range of cases, but my opponent says murderers, and to my knowledge, he's only tried one murder case. And as a defense attorney, we looked up all of his felonies, and he's never tried. He has 0 jury trials and only 2 bench trials. So, you know, I don't want to get into too much puffery here, but, you know, I've handled every kind of case there is at one level or another. And part of being the state's attorney is having done these cases. It helps quite a bit, but it's not the only job requirement to be able to step in and do a trial. But certainly one of the things that I'm going to do is I'm going to try cases. I'm going to try major trials, just like I've done in my private practice. Now, one other thing I would say, I have sat waiting for a jury verdict with family members of a murder victim, and that's been my family. So, you know, my commitment to fighting violent crime has led me not to defend cases like that, although I respect people who do.
Thank you. Mr. Kennedy, how will you improve transparency and accountability in the office without compromising privacy?
Well, transparency is a huge problem in this office. Article after article written by national media and the local media as well have been met with complete silence, refusal to answer questions. You know, to me, you have to respond to the people who pay your bills. You're a public servant. You need to answer to the press and the public. And now, there's certainly things that cannot and should not be divulged, that are secret or private, but when you're making decisions that are costing taxpayers potentially tens of millions of dollars, you have a responsibility to step up and talk about it. So it's not just talking, though, because you have to live it. So, you know, the proposals that I have, the Conviction Integrity Unit, that's going to be a publicly posted position. Nobody's going to get that because they're my friend or because I know them or I've approached them during a political campaign. That's going to be posted publicly, and someone who is the best qualified person is going to get it. Same thing with hiring generally. And I'm really going to be very aggressive in terms of getting diverse viewpoints and diverse backgrounds, but we have to have a professional level of hiring. The Friends and Family program needs to end. And, and this is another thing. My campaign and my personality, my background are all independent of the culture of the state's attorney's office. And when my opponent's campaign manager is a former assistant state's attorney who's son of a former assistant state's attorney and is married to a current assistant state's attorney, that says a lot about the culture and about whether they're going to continue that type of culture.
Thank you, Mr. Kennedy. Mr. Nerheim.
I do have to address what issue with, I'm glad to know my opponent's so concerned with my trial record, but should be a little more accurate. I've tried way more than 3 jury trials. I've tried hundreds of cases, and I can give you the names of case numbers of each one of them. Now, with regard to transparency, that's an issue. It's an issue about trust. And the state's attorney's office, quite frankly, is not transparent right now. The state's attorney's job is to get out into the community and talk to people and listen to people. And that's something I've done throughout my campaign, all over this county. And I've learned a lot. I've learned from law enforcement, from chiefs of police, from community leaders, from pastors, and I've listened. And I'll continue that model as state's attorney. State's attorney's office hasn't been good with reporting with the media and responding to the media. Every single reporter that's contacted me throughout my campaign, I've given my personal cell phone number to. And I'm not changing my phone number if I win this election. I will be there to take those calls, to answer those tough questions, to represent you. And there are little things. The website of the state's attorney's office can be improved drastically to help inform the community about crime, trends in crime, things that are going on, and also communication with victims. That has to be drastically improved. It has to start earlier and be maintained continuously throughout the process of a case, which can sometimes take months or even years. And all too often, victims are left out of that process, and that has to change.
Thank you, Mr. Nerheim. Mr. Nerheim, how will you work with local law enforcement?
Well, I will say one of the things, I was asked, what do I think Mr. Waller did well as state's attorney, and I think that's one of the things he has done well, is his working with law enforcement, because I've met with every chief of police in Lake County. I've met with law enforcement throughout Lake County. I worked with them. I've worked with them as a prosecutor. I've worked with them as a defense attorney, oftentimes cross-examining them. And I still have their respect, because they know that when I go to court, I'm there to seek justice. And I'll continue that model. And what you have to do with law enforcement is you have to listen and you have to work together. I spent 2 years in felony review, which is where police officers come in and they ask for permission to charge felony cases. And there were a lot of cases where I would not approve those charges because I didn't feel that the evidence was sufficient. But what I did is I communicated. I would tell those officers, I'm not approving your charge, and here's why. And they left my office, oftentimes not agreeing with me, but they always respected my decision because I communicated. And that's something that we have to continue and listen to law enforcement, because we have to work together. And as I said earlier, the prosecutor, the state's attorney, is the chief law enforcement officer for the county. After the primary, I set a series of meetings throughout the county where I invited chiefs of police to come and sit down, and I didn't talk. I listened. And this wasn't publicized. There was no cameras there. This wasn't part of a media campaign issue. This is because I wanted to listen to them and to hear their ideas on how we can run that office better and represent the people better. Because this issue of trust and the lack of trust in that office involves law enforcement as well, and they know it.
Thank you, Mr. Nerheim. Mr. Kennedy.
Thank you. As state's attorney, you have a responsibility to work with law enforcement to make sure that you get it right, that you protect the general public, and that you get it right on behalf of defendants as well. So as a prosecutor, your duty is also to uphold defendants' rights. But you also have, in addition to working with law enforcement, you have to be independent, and you have to provide an independent viewpoint, a devil's advocate viewpoint, as it were, and not be so close to the people involved that you can't say no to them. And I think that's been a major problem. I fundamentally disagree with the track record of the current office. In terms of working with police agencies, I think we've seen major problems here in that they're too close. And so that when the police bring a case, such as some of the ones that we've read about in the media, that have obvious flaws, that the state's attorney's loyalties run more toward the protection of the officers who brought that, or their reputations, or the simple verdict that they may have obtained years ago, rather than to getting it right and making sure that you have the right person. Because fundamentally, when you get the wrong person, that means the right person's free. And in one case, we know that the right person went and murdered somebody. So that's where you really need to have oversight and independence. Now, you work together to get it right. And I spent time in that felony review division too. And I never turned down a case that was beyond a reasonable doubt. But I also never said yes to a case that we could not prove beyond a reasonable doubt. And that's something that we need to do as prosecutors, and every prosecutor in my office is going to have that ethic and that independence, so that we work together to make sure that people are safe. But you do that by making sure you're right.
Thank you, Mr. Kennedy. Mr. Kennedy, would you change the structure of the office? And if so, where would funding for those changes come from?
The main structural change is to have the conviction integrity unit that I propose, because by having a senior prosecutor within the office who also operates independently from the rest of the divisions and has an oversight function, you're sending a message to the entire office that this is someone who needs to be respected and with whom you need to cooperate, even if they're reviewing something that you worked on before or are working on right now. So I think that's the main cultural and structural change that will drive the kind of development toward what I've been advocating for since day one of my campaign, which is a model office. The state's attorney's office in Lake County ought to reflect the benefits that we have of living in one of the wealthiest communities in counties in America, but also one of the most diverse. We ought to have a state's attorney's office that is a model for others. So the first thing is the conviction integrity unit and its independent oversight of those within the office. Because if I'm elected, I'm going to have 73 attorneys under me who are appointed by my predecessors. So I need to have somebody who is independent yet serves me and will oversee that. So, and that will probably have to take the position of some other slot in terms of budget, but I've advocated for better spending and funding. I'm on the school board in Libertyville, where we have a AAA bond rating for the last 3 years. I know how to oversee and administer public funds. That's something I'm going to do responsibly, just like I've done before in public office. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kennedy. Mr. Nerheim.
State's Attorney's Office budget is $13.9 million. 93% of that is staff, people. You can only cut so many rubber bands and paper clips. And as I indicated earlier, 3 of those positions are grant funded. Those grants will not be refunded. So whoever takes over this office, to talk about new positions, new people is not practical. We have to make sure whoever takes over this office is ready to find money for 3 positions that we're going to lose. Now, we're going to seek more grants, but grants are tough because they're temporary and they're not guaranteed. We can be more aggressive with drug asset forfeiture, take money from criminals that are selling drugs and harming our community. My case review panel is free. The people that have agreed to serve on this panel independently are volunteering their time to work. That won't cost any money. We need to restructure the prosecutors that work in the office right now. And these things I see because I'm there every day. I was in a courtroom on the 4th floor, a DUI courtroom not too long ago. There were 5 prosecutors in one courtroom and 2 defendants. Down the hall, there was 1 prosecutor and 100 defendants. We have the people. We need to use them more effectively and more reasonably. Another thing I would change with regard to the structure of the office is I would not start prosecutors in DUI court. Prosecutors right out of law school start handling DUI cases. Those are among the toughest to prove, and they're very important in our community. And I would also have more experienced prosecutors working in felony review, which is the gateway to the entire criminal justice system.
Thank you, Mr. Nerheim. And question for you, should the state's attorney office be nonpartisan? What would you do to make this office more nonpartisan?
Absolutely. I've said from day one, when you start talking politics, Democrat, Republican, with regard to the state's attorney's office, you lose the point. This is not a political office. I'm running as a Republican. I'm proud to be a Republican. I recently turned money down from the Republican Party. I haven't taken any PAC money. This is something that I believe in. I don't just talk about it. This is not a political office. And anybody that followed my primary knows that I was not the Republican Party's choice. The Republican Party picked somebody to replace Mike Waller, and it wasn't me. And I went out and every single elected official endorsed my opponent. Every Republican precinct committeeman in this county was working for my opponent. And I went out with my friends and my family, and I won. And what's important about that is, as I stand here right now, I'm not beholden to either party. I want to represent you. If somebody breaks the law, I don't care if they're a Republican or a Democrat. There is a perception right now that the good old boys run the state's attorney's office. And that may be true. But I beat the good old boys, because the good old boys were not supporting me in my primary. And I haven't accepted their support now. I'm going to keep working for you.
Thank you, Mr. Nerheim. Mr. Kennedy.
When I announced in July of last year that I was running against Mike Waller. And the first thing I said was, in addition to what I was proposing in terms of practical solutions, was to remove politics from the state's attorney's office. Politics has had too much of an influence over decision-making at many, many levels, from high-profile cases to even the small ones. There's a lot of who you know that has gone on there for a very long time, and it's part of this culture. 32 years of one-party control and dominance, the hiring practices that have gone on, and you know, I am a Democrat, but you know, like I said, I've taken on in my private practice public officials in both parties, and that ruffled some feathers, and that was uncomfortable, but that was the right thing to do, and that's what I'm all about. So I've said this before, if my mother comes to Lake County and commits a crime, she's going to be prosecuted. But she's not going to be prosecuted by me, because what you do in that instance is you bring on a special prosecutor, an independent prosecutor, and that's something that has not been done to the fullest extent. So in terms of party backing, you know, my opponent had plenty of elected officials, judges backing him in the primary, and to say that he has not taken money from the Republican Party is perhaps technically true, but those who fund the Republican Party have funded his campaign, including a recent $10,000 donation by the main funder of the Republican Federation.
Thank you, Mr. Kennedy. This will be the last question before the closing statements. Mr. Kennedy, in terms of both criminal and civil, what particular legal areas need more focus at this time by the office, and why?
Well, for one, I believe that the sex crime cases need special attention. I think that, and having been in a felony courtroom with a huge caseload, where you have a sex case that may not have been worked up very well, and that may have proof difficulties, it's a lot harder to toe a hard line on those cases than, you know, a simple drug case, or a case that only requires a professional to be your witness. So that's why you need to focus more on developing those cases and working them up from the beginning, and making sure that you have the commitment to getting those cases right, because they're the most difficult. In terms of civil cases, I think, you know, there's a lot in the office that is outsourced currently that ought to be taken in-house, and there's only 10 attorneys in that division, but I do think that the cost that is involved in outsourcing some of them can certainly be realized for taxpayers. I also think that we can develop people's careers in a way that that lead to expertise in certain areas. So that's why committing to a couple of years in the sex crimes unit makes it better for everybody. Same thing with the drug division, which I think in a lot of ways has outlived its initial purpose. That ought to be repurposed towards focusing on gangs. There's a new statute out there that Anita Alvarez, who endorsed me recently, the Cook County State's Attorney, got passed, that allows for some of the tools that federal prosecutors use.
Thank you, Mr. Kennedy. Mr. Nerheim.
Well, there is, and sometimes the civil division is sort of forgotten in these discussions, and there is a civil division in the state's attorney's office. There's 10 attorneys in that division. They do very important work. They represent the county employees, the county board, and they again, it's a very important division. We don't hear a lot about the civil division, and I think largely it's because they're doing their job. They're working. Now, there are things we can do to restructure, and I do agree we should not outsource a lot of the cases that are outsourced. We have 10 attorneys that we're paying right now, qualified, dedicated attorneys that can handle those cases that we still give money to private attorneys to handle. So we can do a lot to work more effectively in the civil division and handle those cases in-house, saving taxpayer money, or perhaps hiring more prosecutors. Because to answer your question, criminal. is more important. And I'll just say it in one word. Civil cases are important, but when you go to court on a criminal case, whether it's a traffic case, a misdemeanor case, a felony case, you're talking about something that's more important than any amount of money, than any judgment. You're talking about justice. You're talking about liberty. And that's important to people. This is about people, victims and defendants. The problems that we're seeing right now in that office have to do with criminal cases. And again, I've dedicated my life, my career, to criminal law on both sides. I know how to fix this problem, and I will.
Thank you, Mr. Nerheim. For our closing statements, we will begin with Mr. Kennedy. You have 1.5 minutes.
Thank you. I've dedicated my career to independence and integrity. I've turned down cases that could have made me money because I didn't want to be on that side of a case. And that's what's motivated me throughout my life. I started, in college, I decided I wanted to be a lawyer because I wanted to be a prosecutor. That's why I went to law school. I did internships with the U.S. Attorney's Office, Director of Public Prosecutions in Ireland. And ultimately, when I was an assistant state's attorney here, it was the most fulfilling work I could imagine doing. And to me, that is what is most important. I have a track record for a long time of being independent and of doing the right thing, even when that is the hard thing to do, and it usually is. And when I see what's gone on here in Lake County, the injustice, the cost to taxpayers, and then ultimately the cost of public safety that's involved when you get it wrong, that is fundamentally wrong. And so I feel a need to do something about that. I'm the only candidate in this race who has a demonstrated track record of leadership and independence and the diverse background that is required to manage an office of 73 attorneys and another 70 plus employees. I've managed and supervised attorneys and other personnel. And as I said, I've written the law. I've actually led years-long statewide movements. And I do have a personal reason for wanting to ensure that justice is done in all cases. A vote for me is a vote to change the practices and the course of what's gone on here. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kennedy. Mr. Nerheim.
Well, as I said earlier, it's about trust. State's attorney has the power to do two very important things. Make sure our streets are safe, and make sure that those people that have contact with our criminal justice system are treated fairly. And again, I've been on both sides. Wrongful convictions are something that I care very much about. I don't just talk about wrongful convictions. I go to court every day and represent regular people, again, against the state's attorney's office, standing up to them in court. I practice what I preach. I am independent, and you can look at my background. Look at both of our backgrounds. I haven't represented either party. When I went to the party for support early in the primary, they told me they couldn't support me because I haven't done any work for the party. I haven't been there for the party, and you know what? They were right. I haven't been. I haven't worked for either party. I've been raising a family and practicing law. And I'm not beholden to either party. I'm not beholden to any groups, any special interest groups. I want to be beholden to you because the prosecutor is the people's attorney. As a defense attorney, when I go to court, I'm there to represent my client. And all I care about when I go to court now is my client. But as a prosecutor, when you go to court, it's a very different job and a much more important job because you're there to represent the victim, but you're also there to make sure the defendant's treated fairly. And again, I have the experience to restore pride to the state's attorney's office.
Thank you, Mr. Nerheim. This concludes the forum. I'd like to thank the audience for your participation today, and thank you to the sponsoring organizations, the Daily Herald, the Lake County Bar Foundation, the American Association of University Women, and the League of Women Voters of Lake County. Don't forget to vote either during early voting between October 22nd and November 3rd, or on Election Day, Tuesday, November 6th. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. I've not done state's attorneys before, and it's the only time I